In a robotics lab, a suspended robot suddenly activated and began flailing violently, while two researchers were programming it, swinging heavy components that could have caused serious injury. This incident highlights the critical dangers of working on energized robotic systems without extensive proper lockout or physical restraints. Robots must be powered down, isolated, and secured before programming or maintenance begins. Suspended equipment should be mechanically stabilized, and emergency stop controls must be tested and within immediate reach. Establishing exclusion zones and following lockout/tagout procedures are essential to prevent unexpected motion and struck-by injuries during robotics work. At the back of a furniture store, a forklift operator was run over by his own moving forklift after jumping off to steady a falling box, leaving the unmanned machine circling and dragging him along the ground. This incident demonstrates the deadly consequences of leaving powered equipment unattended and attempting to manually stop unstable loads. Operators must never exit moving forklifts and should allow falling loads to drop rather than placing themselves in harm's way. Forklifts must be fully stopped, placed in neutral, and brakes engaged before dismounting. Loads should be properly secured and centered before transport, and emergency stop procedures must be clearly understood to prevent runaway equipment and severe crush injuries. On a city road at midnight, a speeding car struck one of several people walking in the roadway after a party, despite the street appearing empty moments earlier. This incident highlights the extreme danger of walking in active traffic lanes. Even when roads seem clear, pedestrians must use sidewalks or designated crossings and remain alert at all times, especially at night. Drivers must reduce speed in urban areas, maintain visibility awareness, and anticipate unexpected pedestrians. Poor lighting, impaired judgment, and excessive speed combine to create deadly conditions, making defensive driving and safe pedestrian behavior essential to preventing nighttime roadway fatalities. Near a market road, a speeding motorcycle slammed into another motorcycle that was slowly crossing the street, sending riders flying and triggering a secondary collision with a third motorcycle. This incident highlights the severe risks of excessive speed and poor situational awareness in busy market areas. Riders must slow down near intersections and pedestrian zones, anticipate crossing traffic, and maintain safe stopping distances. Motorcyclists should signal clearly and ensure lanes are fully clear before crossing. High-traffic community roads demand defensive riding, controlled speeds, and constant scanning to prevent multi-vehicle crashes like this. In an automotive shop, a fully elevated Rolls-Royce tipped backward while technicians were working underneath, crushing two workers as one tried to counterbalance the fall by hanging onto the front bumper. This incident demonstrates the extreme danger of improperly balanced vehicles on lifts and the instinctive but deadly mistake of attempting to physically stop a falling load. Vehicles must be correctly positioned on lift arms, weight distribution verified, and secondary supports used before anyone works underneath. Workers should never attempt to catch or stabilize a tipping vehicle. Evacuating the danger zone immediately is the only safe response. Routine lift inspections, proper spotting procedures, and strict adherence to lifting protocols are critical to preventing catastrophic crush injuries in automotive shops. In an ice cream factory, a forklift with its forks fully raised struck an overhead clearance beam, causing the vehicle to tip over and eject the operator from the cab as the machine crashed to the floor and was heavily damaged. This incident highlights the critical dangers of traveling with elevated forks and failing to account for overhead obstructions. Forklift operators must keep forks low while driving, maintain constant awareness of vertical clearances, and follow designated travel paths. Seat belts should always be worn to prevent ejection during tip-overs, and facilities must clearly mark overhead hazards. In a clothing factory, a forklift suddenly caught fire during normal operations, prompting the operator to dismount and grab a fire extinguisher, while nearby workers evacuated to retrieve additional extinguishers. Despite their combined efforts, the flames intensified instead of going out. This incident highlights the dangers of equipment fires and the limits of manual firefighting when underlying fuel or electrical sources are still active. Forklifts must be inspected regularly for fuel leaks, electrical faults, and overheating components. Emergency shutdown procedures, clearly marked exits, and rapid communication with fire services are critical to preventing injuries when industrial equipment fires escalate. At a grocery store, a worker on a ladder platform was knocked down when the platform slowly slid and toilet paper simultaneously tipped over onto him, sending both the ladder and worker crashing to the floor, buried under bundles of tissue. This incident demonstrates the hazards of unstable access equipment and improperly stacked merchandise. Ladder platforms must be placed on level surfaces and secured against movement before climbing. Shelved items should be stacked safely to prevent collapse, and workers should never reach or pull loads that could destabilize surrounding products. Using spotters and ensuring ladders are locked in place are essential to preventing falls during stocking operations. In a port yard, a worker covering a dump truck's cargo box slipped and misstepped while standing on top of the load, falling from the truck and striking the hard ground below. This incident highlights the serious fall hazards of working at height on unstable surfaces. Workers must avoid climbing onto truck beds whenever possible, and instead use approved access platforms or fall protection systems. Cargo coverings should be applied from ground level using tools or mechanical aids. When elevated work is unavoidable, slip-resistant footwear, guardrails, and spotters are essential. Proper procedures for working at height are critical to preventing life-altering fall injuries in port operations. At an airport baggage hub, a worker was seriously injured after a small metal cart was pushed from an elevated platform that struck him directly on the head. This incident demonstrates the deadly risks of dropping or pushing objects from a height without securing the area. Elevated platforms must have tow boards or barriers to prevent items from falling, and workers should never throw or push equipment downward. Exclusion zones must be established beneath overhead work, and hard hats are essential in areas where falling object hazards exist. Clear communication and proper material handling procedures are critical to preventing severe head injuries in busy baggage operations. During an internet line installation job, a worker was electrocuted after placing a metal ladder against live electrical cables, triggering visible flames before he fell to the parking lot below. This incident highlights the extreme danger of using conductive ladders near energized power lines. Workers must always identify overhead utilities before setting up ladders and use non-conductive fiberglass ladders when working near electricity. Minimum clearance distances from live lines must be maintained at all times, and power should be isolated whenever possible before starting work. Proper site assessment, electrical awareness training, and the use of insulated equipment are critical to preventing fatal electrocution accidents. At a road junction, a pedestrian who had just crossed the street was suddenly struck by a falling, newly installed wooden electrical pole from the opposite side, knocking him to the ground, causing instant unexistence. This incident highlights the unpredictable dangers of unstable roadside infrastructure and the importance of securing utility poles during nearby vehicle or construction activity. Work zones around utilities must be clearly barricaded, and pedestrians must be kept at safe distances. Drivers and crews should monitor poles, cables, and supports for movement or instability, especially at intersections. Public areas near active utility work require strict exclusion zones and continuous supervision to prevent sudden strike by hazards like this.